So I'm here at Pier 26 in New York City, and I wanted to give you guys just a quick little tour, a 360 tour, and show you some of the cool features that there are. So the first area I want to take you through is this garden area that's to the north side of the pier, and it is separated by several different distinct ecosystems. And so what we're in right now, they call the Woodland Forest, and the reason that they set it up this way is because they wanted people to experience New York City before the helicopters, before the concrete jungle, before all of these things were here. And so they set up 4 different distinct ecosystems along the way. So the first one was Woodland Forest that we're in right now, and then next I'm going to take you to the next one, which is coastal grasslands. It's really cool to see just all the amazing fauna, the trees. These are some of the first trees that were planted here, and so they actually have grown the most as they've matured, while everything else was still first getting planted. And so you can just really see what they meant for the park to look like in this area. So as we leave the woodland area, we start to go in the coastal grassland ecosystem, and this is also separated by this amazing recreational court. And so what they did was they designed this amazing boardwalk, completely covered with Kebney modified woods. And what that allowed them to do was have something totally sustainable and durable. So the goal of this was that the community would have something that they could use, which they much needed in a city like this. They can never have enough sport courts and recreational areas. And at the same time, they have this beautiful area, boardwalk, that people can walk and really experience the pier to its full extent. So now we're going to go down to the Maritime Scrub. So one really cool feature of this park is that they've designed the furniture in very unique and very intentional ways. For instance, if you look at this bar top, they wanted to create, first of all, a windbreak so that this pier could be used more in the colder months, and it would be able to break some of this northern crosswinds. But at the same time, they still wanted people to be able to look out and see the beautiful Hudson River. And so what they decided to do was create these bar tops, and they netted it off to make it completely safe. At night, there's lights that light up this whole netting, and it's become sort of a mobile co-working station for a lot of people. And so as the pandemic has lessened, and as people have been outside more, they've found that it's really nice and relaxing to just come here, do some work, have their coffee in the morning, whatever the case may be. And so there's really a lot of cool and interesting ways that people can use furniture around here. You see these different seating areas along the wall here. You have the bar top, you have the lounge chairs back the other way, and then you can kind of see them now, but they have these, what they call sheds, which have essentially porch swings that allow people to really experience the pier like they couldn't otherwise, almost like it's their front porch that they get to swing and just relax and enjoy the views as the sun goes down here on the pier. So the next spot I want to show you guys is, as we get towards the end of the pier, we walk through these coastal grasslands, as you see here, and we go into that Maritime Scrub, which is essentially like what you'd find on sand dunes. And so we've gone from the wooded areas to the coastal areas, and now we're hitting really the edge, the beach areas, and then we'll go into a really cool area that they call the tide deck. So let's take a look at that. So from this vantage point, you get to see some of the other seating areas that they have here. They have the lounges over here that are very popular, very comfortable. They have some of these different step-down seatings people can use in various different ways, and they have the sheds behind you. The one here that's covered in Core-10 steel, reminiscent of what you'd find on a pier, and then this one over here that's clad in Kebney and sort of this ladder effect. And these, again, it's just another way for us to experience the pier, not only as something that is for recreational purposes, but also something that is for relaxation and really can be used in as many different ways as people can imagine. And you're also in that Maritime Scrub area where you see some of these different shrubs that you'd find closer to the shore. And just beyond that, you'll see we're going into sort of this elevated area that comes to a T, and under that is the tide deck and tide pool that we'll go check out now. So this right here is a spectacular view, and this can really show you what I'm talking about when we talk about the tide deck. So back behind me you see two different parts. So one is these boulders. They brought in hundreds of boulders to mimic what a coastal area could look like in Manhattan hundreds of years ago, before there's ever any buildings. And the goal here was they dropped these boulders in that they brought from upstate New York, placed each one individually in a very, very complex puzzle so that none of them could shift. They were all placed by hand in the correct places, and then they put what they call a PET media in between so that they could grow some of the indigenous plants that would have been inside of that low tide, high tide area. And so right now the tide's coming in. It's beginning to be high tide, so you start to see them mostly covered up. And then at low tide, all of these rocks are essentially uncovered and can be seen. And what's really cool about that is inside of a lot of these rocks, they've created these divots that they call tide pools. Now in the tide pools, the goal is that as the tide goes away, the water stays in these pools, and they're growing all kinds of algae, barnacles, even oysters, worms, all kinds of different marine life that really had nowhere to go before this was in place. And so it's very cool to see. There's an area in the center that you can actually go down near this area. It's not open to the public, but what they do is educational tours for classrooms. They do it for the public at different times. So it's very cool to see. And the other great thing about this area is you get to see this amazing view, this stunning pier jetting out. So the original pier actually stopped pretty close to here, and they were able to extend it out to this point out here, another 150 feet or so, so that you got an even more spectacular view. As you can see up here, you have One World Trade Center. Way back in the distance, you have the Statue of Liberty. Over here is Pier 40, and that's New Jersey over there. And so you get to see all of Manhattan essentially from this pier, which is just incredible. So let's go out there on the end. I'll show you some of the inner parts of the triangle, and then we'll make our way back. So now we're at the end of the pier, out here where we can see a spectacular view, Statue of Liberty, New Jersey, all kinds of area. And you can actually look back now and see the whole pier in its entirety. You see the sheds, the recreation, all the way back. So it's really incredible to see just the thought process and the design that went into this pier. For instance, in here you can see that not only did they clad this decking area with ebony, but they also carried it over. And the reason for that was because the designers, they wanted to be able to showcase not only the pier, but the material that wrapped around it. Almost, their original design concepts at Woodland Studio were reminiscent of an octopus, a squid that would have been in the waters of the Hudson River a long time ago. And so they tried to mimic sort of that tentacle-like feeling by wrapping the ebony wood around. And that just, I feel like, just heightens the experience of those that are here. And it's really cool right now to see the tide coming in. You see it flows in and essentially covers this whole inside area here. So now I want to take you back down, and we'll go down the boardwalk area so you can take a look and see some of the interesting parts of that. So to give you an idea of the amount of thought that had to go into the design of this pier, what we're standing on right now is essentially like a promenade. It's concrete, but they also wanted to feel like this was connected to nature as well. And so what they did was they put all these seashell areas, a lot of angular pieces. And so in doing that, what they were able to do is carry out the natural elements and really the feeling that you got. The other thing that they had to deal with was weight restrictions. So when dealing with the weight restriction, the biggest piece was that they could only have 300 pounds per foot on all of this pier. Now, when you have dirt, you have pieces of wood and concrete and all these different elements, it's really hard to figure out how you can build this up, which is essentially a big concrete pad that they had to fill in, but they couldn't have that much weight on it. And so they came up with this design that used a material that's essentially a gel foam that's extremely light but also very strong. And so they blocked out certain walls. They put the gel foam in it, and they were able to put the concrete on top of it, and that makes this strong enough that it could actually hold a fire truck if it needed to. And that's what they had to be able to accommodate along this promenade, is they had to have a fire truck be able to go from all the way down at the end all the way here without making any turns, and that's what they accomplished. So very cool. So now we're walking down the main center area, which is the boardwalk, and this is probably one of the coolest aspects of this. It elevates you up into the other areas, the wall, the recreational area, and you also get to see the garden area over here to the north side. And then on the south side, they have this nice grassy lawn, and they've made it very versatile. They can have, you know, events in the park, from outdoor movies, and they can even open up the netting on this recreational court so that they can use that in different ways. And so I hope that you've enjoyed this tour. I'm gonna go down, maybe get a little bite to eat at the City Vineyard restaurant here at the end, and enjoy the rest of New York City.